What is going on, my Diablo gamers? It is I, Byrdman778, here with a small little druid leveling guide. I know there's going to be plenty of those out here, but essentially since the start of this, everyone's been telling me that druid has been horrendous leveling up, and so far this has not been an issue for me. So I kind of want to go over everything that I've been doing to kind of make my life so much easier, so it can help make your life so much easier. Now, before we get into this video, you can follow me over on YouTube and Twitter at Byrdman778. Give a like, subscribe, become a member, comment down below other setups you're interested in seeing, and then yeah, follow me over on Twitter to see some horrendous memes and just terrible takes and stuff like that. Until then, let's get right into the video. Now, before getting all this, I want to give a quick little shout out to my homie Moxie. Whenever I was starting out all this stuff, he kind of gave me some tips and tricks on exactly what to do to kind of set up Druid and make it as efficient as possible. So shout out to Moxie. He's been killing it with his barbarian build. He's got a really solid whirlwind setup, so make sure you're going and checking him out over on YouTube and Twitch. But let's look at exactly what you need to do here for this class. Now, in the first part of our tree here, we have our basic skill. This is going to deal damage, and you're always available to cast. It's just your basic, like, swinging with whatever your weapon is. We have a couple different options. We have Earth Spike, Wind Shear, Storm Strike, Claw, and Maul. Now, I recommend going into Storm Strike. Why do we do this? It reads, electricity gathers around your weapon, dealing 109 damage to your target and chaining up to 3 surrounding enemies, dealing 20% less damage each time it chains. You gain 25% damage reduction for 3 seconds after dealing damage with Storm Strike. This is a great one to start off with because, one, it's just going to do easy chaining damage to enemies, but also the fact it's going to give you that damage reduction you really need to kind of just live a little bit longer. And then your second point, I recommend going to Enhanced Storm Strike. It has a 15% chance to immobilize all enemies and hit for 2.5 seconds. Now, this is going to be important kind of down the road just because this setup is really going to go heavy into different skills that are going to stop or vulnerable enemies, or just kind of put them back in their tracks, just to either, one, stop them so we can do more damage, or debuff them so we can do more damage with this next ability we're going to talk about. And that's going to be Landslide. This is going to be your core skill. You are going to have to use your spirit to get this going, but it is probably, it's the bread and butter of this build. It does an immense amount of damage once you get it leveled up and you are towards, level 30. I'm doing about 3 strikes on, big mobs, and it's just wrecking the snot out of them. It reads, crushing enemies between 2 pillars of earth, dealing 423 damage. But we are going to use our next point going into the Enhanced Landslide. After Landslide damages enemies 4 times, the next hit will immobilize enemies for 3 seconds. Again, getting another use of that immobilize, just so that enemies are being stopped in their tracks. Next point, I recommend going to Primal Landslide. When you immobilize or stun an enemy, you gain a terror mode. So we're going to be doing this, obviously with our Landslide and also with our Storm Strike. But it continues with, each enemy hit by Landslide consumes a terror mode, causing a guaranteed critical strike for 40% critical strike damage. Bosses always have up to 10% chance to grant a terror mode when hit. Now, this is just great all around for the fact that we're getting these little extra, notches that are going to give us more critical damage. It goes up pretty freaking high, so you are able to just like stack those up and use them consistently. So definitely make sure you're going into that. With your final point, before you go into the third tree, you can either put one more point in the Landslide, but I recommend actually doing yourself a quick favor and going to Fierce Storm Strike. Storm Strike has a 50% chance to make your enemies vulnerable for 3 seconds. This is going to be great for whenever you're just like smacking into a group of enemies. Once that chains and vulnerables a couple enemies, it's just going to make your life a whole lot easier because you're going to be taking a little bit more damage. Once we're down into this third slot, this is going to be a lot of things that are going to be a little bit more defensive oriented. Deliberating Roar, Bloody Howl, Cyclone Armor, and Earth and Bulwark. But obviously we're going to be going to a lot of Earth skills in this. It's kind of like an Earthbender build if you're an Avatar fan like I am, but Earth and Bulwark is a great one to go into. It reads, rocks surround you for 3 seconds, granting a barrier that absorbs 40% of your base life in damage. Now, I just really like this just for the fact it's just like easy damage reduction, especially when you are trying to tank in a lot of enemies. Next, you should definitely go into Enhanced Earth and Bulwark because it's going to make you unstoppable. Essentially, just making sure you can't be, knocked backwards or, stunned or anything like that. It's just going to keep you consistently in the fight. And then I would say finally going to Preserving Earthen Bulwark. Casting that gives you 18% life as Fortify. Now, Fortify is going to become a huge part of this setup just for the fact it's just extra built on health to help us tank out a lot of the damage we're going to be experiencing throughout the early game. Now, you have 2 points to use before you move on, and you absolutely need to put both of these into Landslide. If not, just like max it out at this point, just because, you know, it's going to be, again, your strongest skill. The more you get damage into it, the better off you're going to be. So we're just going to chuck those 2 points in there right now. Your fourth little core here is going to be based into companions. You have things like wolves, you have poison creepers, ravens, and then just a couple of abilities that are going to help juice that up. Now, the poison creepers are probably going to be your best bet. I have tried out the wolves. They're also a lot of fun to use, but the poison creepers are great just for the fact that they are able to immobilize enemies. Again, adding another layer of that immobilization in there. It reads, a poison creeper periodically emerges from the ground every 7 seconds and applies poisoning damage over 6 seconds on the enemies. And while it's active, vines strangle all surrounding enemies, immobilizing them for 2 seconds and poisoning them for 500 damage over 2 seconds. This is just absolutely huge. It's going to immobilize enemies. It's just going to kind of add on to everything that we have there, where essentially it's just going to make sure that enemies aren't moving and we are doing damage to them. You have 2 more points to go into for here, so you might as well just chuck it into Enhanced Poison Creeper. And then you kind of have 2 options here. You can go into Ferocious Poison Creeper, which is going to add 3 extra seconds on that poison. If you're going to do something like a dot build, I'm going to be working on that probably here next, because I think that'd be absolutely awesome. But you probably should go into Brutal Poison Creeper. Your critical strike chance is increased by 20% against enemies strangled by Poison Creeper. Now, critical strike is absolutely huge for this entire setup. You need to do poison, 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 poison. Not poison, well, poison and critical strike. Just because of the fact that your landslide is going to be your big damage, and more critical strike damage and chance that you are able to obtain, the better off you're going to be. In the 5th category here, it's going to do a lot of stuff into like some charging abilities and just like knocking foes back. We got things like Hurricane, Boulder, and Rabies, but you're going to want to go into Trample. Trample is freaking awesome. I love this skill. It is so much fun. 14 seconds of a cooldown, but shapeshifts into a werebear, becoming unstoppable, so you can't be stopped, and charge forward, dealing a certain amount of damage and knocking back enemies. Enemies knocked back into terrain take an additional damage and stun for 3 seconds. So definitely like in like dungeons that are like close quarters and stuff, this is absolutely great just because you're able to hit a bunch of enemies, knock them into walls, and then just do a little bit more damage to them. It is freaking awesome. I love it. And you absolutely want to, you know, feed into this as much as you can. You want to go Enhanced Trample, which can do a bonus 150% damage, and also is reduced by 50% for each enemy hit. So we really like this a lot. And also we want to go into more likely Natural Trample over, you know, Savage Trample. You get extra 20 Spirit whenever you cast it, but I definitely think that getting that extra Fortify is going to help you out a lot. Now, typically we've just been boosting into a lot of these things here. I actually think you need to go over here from this part into Crushing Earth, and honestly just chuck 3 points into it almost immediately. Earth skills deal 50% extra damage to slowed, stun, immobilize, or knock back enemies. We are doing plenty of all these different things with our abilities that we've had throughout this tree so far, so that extra damage is really juicy. You have one more point that you can go into. This is genuinely up to you. I recommend going to one of these skills though. You're eventually going to max these out when you hit level 50, but honestly I would say critical strikes with earth skills fortify you for 2% of your base life is just a simple, easy little one to go into to make your life a little bit better. Now finally, you're into your ultimates. You have things like Grizzly's Rage, Lacerate, Cataclysm, and Petrify. And Petrify is obviously going to be the one you're going to go into just because, again, it's another earth skill. Now, we like Petrify because it's going to do just a huge AoE and stun enemies for 3.75 seconds and deal 25% increased critical strike damage to enemies affected by that. And against bosses, that critical strike damage is increased by 50% and its duration is increased to 7.5 seconds. This is absolutely insane. actually insane, because as long as you have that full spirit, which tends to be a bit of an issue with this entire, I mean, druid in general, the spirit cost is going to be something you're going to work on later in these builds. But just being able to use this and then just absolutely pop on bosses or just like a horde of enemies is really great, especially with landslide. You're going to immediately go into prime petrify, and it's going to increase the duration by 1 second. And then Supreme Petrify. Killing an enemy affected by Petrify grants 25 spirit. I love this against giant mobs of enemies just because I'm able to stun them all and then just activate Landslide and essentially almost immediately get it back. Because if you look at this cost of Landslide, it's 29, you're getting 25 back. You're going to be pretty fine most of the time getting, you know, essentially every single enemy on the battlefield nuked. And if not, you're just going against bosses or something like that. Your life's just going to be just a little bit easier. Now, once you get all of those going, again, the rest of these little points that you're going to go throughout the tree are going to be somewhat mostly up to you. I would definitely say going into starting to go into things like, you know, Defiance natural skills deal 4% increased damage to elites, helping you out against bosses. Your earth skills deal 4% increased damage to vulnerable enemies would be a huge one as well. And then different things like defensive posture increases the amount of fortify you gain from all sources by 5% are really nice. Or again, just going through here and filling out some other skills that you might not have, you know, done all the way. Storm Strike would be a huge one just for the fact that, you know, that's going to be the one skill you're going to be swinging the most, so you might as well juice it up a little bit. I've got 2 points here, so honestly, I'm going to be going into something like maybe, you know, going into Defiance and into Natural Disaster almost immediately. Again, just different things right there. Now for Druid, you have your Spirit Boons. Give Druidic Spirit Offerings to animal spirits. In the Tur Dular, it's like up in the top, you know, like northwest corner of the map to unlock their boons. This is going to be like a side quest you have to fulfill completely. You're going to be getting like these little orbs on the ground throughout while fighting people and stuff, just to, you know, gain a little bit more rep as you go through. And then once you're able to do that, you're able to get these fun little boons that'll give you some extra juice. Now, this is actually one of the spots where I definitely agreed with Moxie whenever him and I were talking about what I should feed into. Up in the top section, I definitely think the damage reduction against elites is huge just for your tanking. In the second category, the Avian Wrath, 30% extra critical strike damage is really nice. In the third category, I actually have 2 of these because I focused my spirit bonding into the wolf one that's right here. And I did that for the bolster to fortify for 10% of your max health when you use a defensive skill. So that's going to be our bulwark. And then also calamity, extend the duration of your ultimate skill by 25%. This is just huge against bossing especially, or again against those big hordes of enemies where you're able to constantly activate your landslide and be able to just hit a bunch of them as much as humanly possible. And then final category, I go into Masochist. Critical strikes with shape-shifting skills heal for 3% of your max health. I really like this just for you whenever I'm doing that charge with my werebear. Getting a little bit of health back is really, really nice. Now, again, like I mentioned, going into like your stats and everything for Druid, I definitely recommend focusing a lot of your stuff into willpower, increase skill damage, because that's going to be like the most that you're going to be using. You're using a lot of skills. Healing received and also overpowered damage. That's just going to be a little bit extra juice on top of there. Focusing on that as much as humanly possible is definitely important in my mind. I would say strength is another one just for tanking. You can maybe go into a little bit of intelligence and dexterity. That's just kind of up to you. The dexterity probably be the best one just because it increases your critical strike chance. But other than that, I would say willpower is your biggest focus. Again, getting your critical strike damage and chance is going to be absolutely huge. Same thing with like the overpower and vulnerable damage as well. Essentially, again, we have all these different debuffs we are applying within our skill tree. Being able to maximize as many of those as humanly possible is huge. And again, like I mentioned before, crushing earth is absolutely awesome just for the fact that we're going to be getting that extra damage. Now, as you're leveling up and stuff, obviously it's really hard to be like, you absolutely have to have like this piece of gear or absolutely have to have this. What I have mainly been using that helps me out specifically has been two-handed weapons, just because they're going to be doing a lot of damage. A lot of times they have overpowered damage bonuses on them, as well as boosts to willpower as well. It might be a bit slower to swing, but at the same time, you're doing a lot of, you know, tanking at the same time, so you don't really have to worry about being super fast on damage because your health is just going to collapse instantly. You're going to plenty of fortify stuff. And it's really not bad. I mean, I think I've only died maybe 4 times in the 24 hours I've been playing. And 2 of those have been because I've just like stopped in an area and like got out of my actual seat and walked away and come back. And I was like, oh, I'm dead. It's a really solid class. I just don't understand why people have probably trashed on it as much as they have. Now, as you go through the game, you're going to be getting different aspects that are going to give you a little bit of juice as you play. You have a little bit of options here. You're going to be getting these from the dungeons, which I actually recommend you just do. I would essentially say, go through the story, play through the story, and as you're playing through, if you see a dungeon, stop by and do it. If you see a little lair, stop by and do it. Those little stops along the way are going to give you one aspect's going to be gear, and it's just going to give you the leveling that you need to just keep on keeping on. A couple of the aspects that I have focused on getting into was definitely ballistic aspect. When you fortify, your earth skills gain 2 ranks. This is going to boost up your landslide, essentially just making it a little bit juicier. Same thing with petrify as well. So definitely fortify as much as you humanly can. That's why having that charge with the werebear, having that fortify on top of it is really nice, because it's going to constantly keep up that +2 on your landslide, as well as, you know, using that earthen bulwark. Really fast, just to kind of go over a few things on like my gear and like what stats I think you really should go into. Things to specifically look out for are, like you would see on my helmet here, +9 to maximum spirit. Spirit's going to be an issue for, I would say, druid mostly. It's going to be more of an end game, I think to essentially boost that up to make your life a whole lot easier. But I think once that happens, druid's going to be beyond meta. It's almost gonna probably have to get nerfed, just because I think it's going to be a really, really insane character. As well as things like damage reduction, werebear damage, attack speed, overpower. You don't really need to worry about lucky hit chance, because we just don't have a whole lot of that. Boosts into your willpower, dodge chance are really nice. I have an extra evade on this. Again, spirit cost reduction over there. Healing received, the plus thorns isn't really great. +1 to all companion skills I really like, just to help out with our poison. Critical strike chance, obviously regen when we're not in battle. And then just the boost to vulnerable physical damage and poison damage. I really enjoy that. And then on my weapon itself, again, just like overpowering plus willpower. Lucky chance, cool, but I don't really notice it all that much. And then the damage to stunned enemies. If I missed anything, please let me know in the comments down below. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'm going to keep on grinding with this. This again is kind of just a, you know, druid for dummies, like how you should start out everything. I definitely just been having a whole lot of fun with this character. I think I'm going to become probably the druid daddy, even though I am currently a mommy in the game. Druid is seeming as though it's going to be a super fun character. It's like this it's like mixed of like tanking with like kind of like spell casting in a way. I really enjoy it just because I enjoy both those aspects. But having them at the same time is really fun. Also, people saying that this character is bad when it's actually fun is like also kind of like fits into my entire narrative. If you're someone who played Outriders whenever I was doing that, Devastator, everyone hated on Devastator and ended up being like one of the best characters by I mean, even like this point in my opinion. Thanks so much for watching the video. Hope you guys really enjoy it. Know you can follow me down below, become a member, subscribe, comment, like, all that stuff. Follow me over on Twitter as well. But thank you so much. Be expecting a lot more Diablo coming up here soon. I hope you guys have a great night, day, or whatever it may be.